Well, that didn't take long. Israel just carried out a series of airstrikes against Houthi targets in Yemen in response to a Houthi missile that impacted yesterday near the Ben Gurion airport. This series of strikes is about 2,000 kilometers away from Israel. That's no joke. Now, the Israeli military has confirmed this operation. We'll run through their statement here, as well as some responses from the Houthis. I have heard rumors that this is being referred to as Operation Port City. Maybe that's actually kind of boring compared with the names that Israel comes up with other operations, so we'll wait and see. Nonetheless, they say the IDF confirms carrying out airstrikes in Yemen a short while ago, saying it comes as a response to the Houthis' ballistic missile attack yesterday on Ben Gurion Airport and other previous attacks. There had been, probably just in the last month, 20-plus Houthi attacks against Israel, and there hasn't been an Israeli response, overt, that we've seen, and more on that in a second. But Israel saying this is all kind of wrapped up into one response. They say, according to the military, 20 jets participated in the airstrikes today against the Houthis. The jets dropped 50 munitions targeting Houthi infrastructure along the coast in Yemen, including at the Hadida port and a concrete facility 2,000 kilometers from Israel, which really gives you an idea that these Israeli aircraft, with their own refuelers that it sounds like took part in this operation, would be able to conduct long-range strikes inside of Iran. So always have to keep that in mind when it comes to anything, any operations against the Houthis. There's always a secondary target there, or a secondary audience, and that is the Ayatollah in Tehran. The IDF says the Hadida port is used by the Houthis for the transfer of Iranian weapons, equipment for military needs, and other terror purposes. Nothing new there. We've seen the Hadida port. Unfortunately, the Hadida port, there's also a lot of humanitarian aid that flows through there to the people in Yemen that desperately need that, and the Houthis do use it to smuggle in weapons components, and that's not a secret. It's been well documented for years. That's what Israel went after in this attack, and it's not the first time they've gone after Hadida. They hit that in a previous wave of attacks as well. They say the concrete factory serves as an important economic resource for the Houthi terror regime and is used for building tunnels and military infrastructure, adding that the strikes constitute a blow to the regime's economy and its military buildup. This marks the 6th Israeli strike in Yemen since the beginning of the war and the first since January. The IDF says they've stopped responding to the Houthi missile and drone fire on Israel as the United States has launched a pretty significant aerial campaign against the Iran-backed group in recent months. So that's Operation Rough Rider, and I should note that the U.S. carried out a series of airstrikes in Yemen earlier today, before and after the Israeli strike. So about 2 hours before the confirmation came in that Israeli bombs were falling in Yemen, an announcement was made that American bombs had actually hit a bunch of targets across Sana'a. Seemed like there was a little gap, then Israel hit, and then there was another little gap, and as I'm recording right now, there's more reports of American strikes across Yemen. Those earlier strikes apparently were against 30-some targets. The Yemen Ministry of Health at that point said 14 different people had been injured. That's been updated since then. Now the number we're hearing is 21 citizens is the term being used by the Houthis. They say that's as a result of the U.S. and Israeli aggression, so kind of combining all day worth of airstrikes. We should also add that the Houthi Political Bureau member Mohammed al-Bukhati put out a statement saying, quote, "Targeting civilian areas in Yemen have inflicted heavy losses, but we will continue to support Gaza." Now, a couple notable things here. First off, Israel kind of sitting back and not striking alongside the United States over the course of the last couple months. We've talked about that in previous videos, that it's really, it has only been the United States since March 15th carrying out attacks against the Houthis. There's a couple different reasons for that. In terms of kind of operational control here, it makes sense to clear up the airspace. You don't have to deconflict as much when it's, wait, Israel, are you doing it today? No, it's us. If they were just to say, we're not going to hit anything for quite a while. When we are going to move in there, we're going to clear that with you guys. But U.S., you just do what you need to do in Yemen, and we'll raise our hand if we're going to take a run at it. And it sounds like that's what happened here, where there is some reporting that Israel, of course, coordinated with the United States to come into Yemeni airspace and make sure the U.S. wasn't dropping bombs at the same time, or there weren't Tomahawks flying nearby. However, it sounds like the spy planes, the targeting aircraft, and the refuelers were all Israeli, so there were no American aircraft used in that very specific window of Israeli strikes. Nonetheless, I would expect to hear more about the battle damage assessment sometime tomorrow. As the sun comes up, we'll get more pictures and more reporting from Yemen, and probably more reporting from Israel as well. Now, this is kind of overshadowing what I would argue is an even bigger story coming out of Israel in the last 24 hours. And that's that a new offensive operation has been given the go-ahead for Gaza. And this one is going to put the last one to shame. I'm talking about the complete destruction of the Gaza Strip, moving the entire population into very small humanitarian zones and what sounds like a permanent occupation by the IDF. So that's not getting as much reporting today because the Houthi strikes, right? This is big, though, and we'll get more into it in the coming days. But as reported by Barak Ravid in Axios, he says, quote, Israel has set President Trump's visit to the Middle East next week as a deadline for a new hostage and ceasefire deal, with a massive ground operation to commence if no deal is reached. Israel's security cabinet approved a plan Sunday night to gradually reoccupy all of Gaza and hold it indefinitely if no deal is reached by May 15th. Plans for the operation call for the IDF to flatten any buildings that remain standing and displace virtually the entire population of 2 million people to a single humanitarian area. Now, they refer to this a couple times as the Rafah model. So what I'm going to do for part of this video, the footage that I'll be showing here at times will be of Rafah to show you what that looks like after Israel has moved through there and established what they're referring to as kind of this buffer zone after evacuating the population. So this is the model for the rest of Gaza right now. The IDF spokesperson, Brigadier General F.E. Dufresne, said in a statement, quote, Operation Might and Sword has many achievements, but despite everything, Hamas remains reluctant. We are moving forward with Operation Gideon's Chariots. And look, that's why I said the operation earlier, Operation Port City, kind of sounds boring. Like maybe that's not actually the name, because when you're talking about these ground operations into Gaza, we've got Might and Sword and Gideon's Chariots. That's like, how do they get to Port City from that? But nonetheless, Gideon's Chariots is the one set to commence here shortly. We reported yesterday that tens of thousands of Israeli reservists have been called up. We should expect them able to enter the force here within the next probably week to 10 days, with operations now labeled set to kick off on or around the 15th. Turning back to the IDF spokesperson, he says the operation will include a broad offensive that includes the displacement of most of the population of the Strip, continued attacks, the elimination of terrorists, and the dismantling of infrastructure. We will repeat the Rafah model in other areas of the Strip as well. Now, Rafah is the southernmost city in the Gaza Strip along the border with Egypt, and what we've seen there is recently the IDF has moved into Rafah, kind of secured that whole area, and leveled it, bulldozed just about anything that's still standing, and moved the entire civilian population out. They're not coming back, not anytime soon, and that appears to be the plan for other portions throughout Gaza. Some statements here from Minister Smotrich in Israel. He said, quote, from the moment a maneuver begins, there is no withdrawal from the territories that we have conquered, not even in exchange for hostages. The only way to free the hostages is to subdue Hamas. We are occupying Gaza to stay. There is no more entry and exit. This is a war for victory. It is time to stop being afraid of the word occupation. We are overwhelming Hamas. We will not surrender. They will surrender. And according to Smotrich, he says all residents of the Gaza Strip will be evacuated south of the Marag axis, apologies for the pronunciation there. I'll have that up on the screen here, to an area where, and only there, supposedly, humanitarian aid will be distributed under Israeli security. There's also talks of a kind of fence system being built around some of these occupied areas to try to just further move through and ensure that the entire area is cleared of Hamas and they can't come back and remilitarize some of these areas to carry out future attacks against Israel. Continuing on here, they say the deployment of forces prior to the start of the maneuver will allow a window of opportunity until the end of Trump's visit to the region to carry out a hostage deal, according to the Witkoff model. So there are Israeli forces operating in Gaza right now, and they have been for some time. That's nothing new. They're not going to wait until Trump's visit wraps up. They're going to continue pushing forward, trying to keep that pressure on Hamas with the hopes that this current setup might possibly, hopefully, get Hamas to the negotiating table to agree to hand over more hostages in exchange for probably their handing over control of the Gaza Strip. So it sounds like Israel's not completely giving up on that, but given the moves behind the scenes, the unanimous approval of this new war plan, people coming out confidently saying there will be an occupation of the Gaza Strip. That was a taboo for a long time, has been a taboo word about all of this because it starts to hint at the idea of ethnic cleansing. There's no other way to put that. When you're forcibly removing a population from one area, telling them they cannot return, we're just going to take that from you, you have to go somewhere else, that's what that is. So Israel has long, a lot of Israeli leadership has long avoided the term occupation in the Gaza Strip for just that reason, and some historical context there as well. They say if a hostage deal is not reached, Operation Gideon's Chariots is set to begin. They are including what they're calling a voluntary transfer program for Gaza residents. They say especially those who are concentrated in the south, outside of Hamas control. And we've seen a little bit of this already, where Israel is facilitating, it sounds like. I haven't really seen the results of this, but it sounds like Israel is facilitating the transfer of Palestinian civilians from Gaza, and they go through a filtering process, and they're able to leave the Gaza Strip if they want to. And that was not really the case for the majority of the war. So when you're looking at the entirety of the Palestinian population in Gaza, the majority, it sounds like, will be filtered into a couple of these smaller humanitarian zones. Yet to see exactly where those will set up, but nonetheless, it's going to be a lot of people crammed into a very small area as, under Operation Gideon's Chariot, Israel pushes through the remaining portions of the Gaza Strip in this Rafah model, destroying whatever they see, getting after Hamas, and doing their best to bring home the hostages. But that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.